Oh God, no, I'm not going to do it. Okay, gather myself together. And among other conferences, but 2010 actually in particular strikes me because, as you know, it's very much the business of Al-Anon. And she was chairman of the policy committee that year. And we had a lot of heavy lifting that we had to do, one of which was creating a whole entirely new section for Alateen in our service manual. And I have to tell you, we would meet, we would go through things, we would have to go back, retool it, come back. That happened day after day after day at conference. And we just slugged our way through it, and she walked us through that process. And she may not have felt it, but she exuded grace and I would say courage under fire. I don't know. She's just an amazing woman. And you know what? She may not tell you this about herself, but she is a gifted artist. I've seen some of her work. So anyway, I cannot wait to hear her story. I know you will love her. Mary Gregory.
OMG, I'm in Hawaii. Who could have believed it? I grew up in a little town called Bowmansville, New York. I'm in Hawaii on Waikiki Beach. That's what this program does. Thank you so much for giving me this honor and this experience to come and be with you all. I thank the people who invited me, Carolyn and my good friend Judy, who I've had a chance to do a lot of service work with and has become such a good friend. The whole committee for being so welcoming and wonderful to us. For this. You know, they don't give these out in Bowmansville, New York. And I'm especially happy to be here with my daughter-in-law, who is my guest. And I had 2 sons. I didn't give birth to a daughter, and this is a very special and meaningful experience for me, and her first exposure to AA and Al-Anon, although she qualifies. She'll have to tell you how. I'm not telling that story. I'm really happy that she's with me. We're having such a wonderful time. Yesterday we were going to, I think it was yesterday, my brain is sort of scrambled. It's been such a whirlwind since we've been here. We decided to go snorkeling. And we went to the activities desk to arrange for it. And the man that was taking care of us said, "Are you here with a convention?" And I said, "Yes, we are." And he said, "Which one?" And I said, "We're here with the Alcoholics Anonymous convention." And he said, "Oh, Friends of Bill W." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Weren't you the Friends of George W. last year?" And I said, "I don't think so. But I'm going to be sure to tell that story when I get up to the microphone." So wherever he is. You know, I think we would talk about Bill W. and Lois W., and it's just like everybody knows who that is. But you see, there's still people out there. He may be qualifying. I don't know, for all I know. When I was a little girl, I grew up, let me tell you first that I am a member of the Hamburg. Did I tell you my name? I think I recall it. My name is Mary Gregory, and I'm a very grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon Family Groups. My home group is the Hamburg Courage to Change group. It meets on Tuesday evenings on the shores of the southern shores of Lake Erie, outside of Buffalo, New York. You are so welcome to come there. Don't come now. You may never get out. And I'm one of those lucky people who now in retirement is what we call snowbirds, people in Florida. So I am a member of a group in Venice, Florida for the winter, and lucky to be there. When I was a little girl, I had my aunt and uncle lived on the Erie Canal, and my family was a drinking family. It wasn't yours. And so every weekend we would have our family get-togethers, and we'd all go down to the canal, and we'd sit there, and my family would drink beer, and they'd eat clams, and they'd throw the clamshells into the Erie Canal, and we would spend all weekends there. And it was a lot of fun. And I had a cousin who was not much older than I was, and I adored him. And whatever he always picked me to be on his wiffle ball team. That's why I adored him. Everyone else was saying, get out of here. And he would pick me. So I adored him. And, whatever he was going to say to do, I was already saluting and saying, yes, sir, I'll do that. Because I just wanted to be part of things. And that was my personality. And that personality was still showing up much later when I was still showing up and saluting and saying, yes, sir, I'll do that, wherever I went. My mother had a child when I was about 3, and it was a Down syndrome child. I barely recall it. I was too little. He did not live more than 9 months. And apparently it was a difficult time in my family, and there was a lot of sadness. But I was a 3-year-old child. I was still funny. I was cute. My mother named me Mimsy because. And so I think I thought that my role in life was to go around making everybody feel better. And so now you got 2 things. You got a person showing up saying, yes, sir, and you got somebody who thinks my job is to make you better. I could just stop there. And you don't even have to know any more of my story, do you? Because that's the person who, at 16 years old, saw this cute, red-headed, freckled Irish kid in high school and fell in love. We were so different. Are you surprised? I was the honor society. He was not. I was the orchestra. He was rock and roll. I was whatever, and he was the other end. And of course, that was very attractive, wasn't it? And it's such a funny thing. We went to a high school reunion just a year or so ago, a big reunion. And we met with all the people that were his buddies and his friends one night. And then the next night was another party, and more of the people that I was with, the academics, and, were at that party. Guess which one was way more fun? And I looked at him and I said, geez, no wonder I liked you. They were so boring. I was so boring. We were all into trying to be smart and good and everything, that we were having not much fun. I didn't recognize that at the time, of course. But what I saw is that we just seemed to meet in the night, We were just destined for each other. And so we went together, and we had one of those touching relationships where we broke up every other week. And I would give the ring back, and he would then, we'd have a spat, and then we'd make up, and then a little while later, I'd give the ring back. And we did that till we were engaged, and then I gave the ring back. And he went off to Vietnam, and I went to college. And 4 years later, when he came home, he was a pretty wet place. He was a wet place in high school. You think a smart girl like me would have recognized some of the symptoms, like that he was drunk all the time. And that, I would think, I have all these notes. I used to, how kids text now. We actually had to use pens and paper. How bizarre. So we would write notes to each other, pass notes in the hall, throughout the day. And I saved those notes and found them some years later. And, every note said something like, Leo, do you have to go out with the guys this weekend? Couldn't you come over and spend some time with me? I actually had little cartoons I'd drawn of drunken people. Now, wouldn't you think I would have noticed something there? But, ultimately, this is what I felt like. And I have found that I am so unique in Al-Anon, you probably won't relate to this at all. But in case you do, this is group participation. I knew that all he needed was the love of a and I was a good woman. I was about as good as you could get. People told me, I always thought of myself as sort of holier than thou, and saintly. And then when I went with Leo and then later married Leo, people would say to me, "Oh my God, you're a saint," and I'd say, "I know." And I finally figured that out because I was speaking someplace up, I think it was Nova Scotia, and they had this little Irish lilt, and every other thing they said was, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And I recalled, when I was a girl, my mother used to get upset, and she would say, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Donna, Needle, Mary, and she would name us all. And so it occurred to me that I thought I was part of the Holy Family. And that's why, so here I was, being so good, and having nothing wrong with me at all, and just knowing that if he hooked up with me, eventually I would fix him, and things would be all right. So he went to Vietnam, and he came home, and then, that was when I gave the ring back, and then we got back together. And so one day, I'm on the arm of my father, getting ready to walk down the aisle. You knew that would happen, didn't you? And we were ready to go down the aisle, and I gasped. I went, like that, because I was having a moment of clarity. And my father turned to me and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yep, I'm fine. I'm fine." And that became my life of fine. Things were a mess in our whole household. We were fighting. It was ugly. There was screaming and yelling. There was no money. There was awful, And see, I'd run into people in the street and they'd say, "Hi, Mary, how are you?" And I'd say, "I'm fine." Leo and the kids, "Oh, fine. They're fine. We're fine. We're all fine. Fine." Oh my God, I came to you so many years later and you told me what that acronym FINE stood for. And baby, did I fit that bill. So we walked down the aisle. We're married. I'm happy. I like this guy. I couldn't help it. And we started our life, which was just pretty much what it was before. A little more intense, maybe. We had a child, and then we had another child, and the drinking was gradually getting worse. And I was getting worse. And I used to notice that I had always been a pretty happy person, but I would be standing at the sink doing the dishes, the dinner dishes, and I would be feeling so sad. I wasn't just sad. I was melancholy. It was more Frank Sinatra, 2:45, nobody in the place. That was me doing the dishes. It was like sad wasn't just good enough. I had to be melancholy. So I really was. But I'd be standing there thinking, what happened to that girl? Where did she go? I'd stopped going places. I stopped looking good. I found a photograph on my sister-in-law's refrigerator one time, much after sobriety. We were into sobriety, and she had her kids and all these people up there, and I was looking it over, and I said, who is that couple? There was a woman with her hair in pigtails. She was wearing a drab olive green drab turtleneck. She looked so frumpy. You couldn't believe this. And next to her was this chubby person with a beer bottle, which should have been my giveaway. And I said, "Who are they?" And she laughed and said, "That's you." And I had had no idea that not only had I changed inside, but I was manifesting all of it on the outside. My primary favorite colors to wear were gray, navy blue, and brown. That's how I came to you. And, you know, as I told you, I was so good that even though there were times when things were really bad, other people talk about how they would like to get rid of their spouse. I was hoping to do that. I thought perhaps some one of you would show up and take him away and marry him, and I could be the best lady at your wedding, you know. I wouldn't plan deaths because I told you, I was just too good. I would never, St. Mary of Perpetual Motion would never have done that. But I planned funerals. Oh my God, did I ever plan great funerals. And I have suggested to Al-Anon family groups that they need to put a book together. I picture it as like this little red book with all the stories of the funerals we have planned in there. And then in the back, there could be like this worksheet with a ledger of how we were going to spend the insurance money. I thought this would be like a bestseller. And no one has taken me up on that yet. But so I'll share with you one of my funeral stories. And I have no idea how my sweet baby would have met his demise. But he did. What a relief. And so I would be at the funeral, and he would be laid out in a casket here. And I would be wearing my gray blazer, standing nearby. And our friends and relatives would come by, and they'd look at him, and you know what they'd say? Isn't she a good woman? You know, it's really all about me. And I would be wearing my awards. I saw my awards. They were like on my lapel, you know. And I saw my awards as like little charms. There was a checkbook charm. There was a lawnmower charm. There was a garbage can charm. Because those are all the things I did to keep it all going, you know. I was sending out this message, don't worry, honey, I'm paying the bills, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm taking out the garbage, and I'm a good woman. And then I had another charm, which I didn't know I had, actually. I was speaking someplace and talking about sex, and which I'll share with you in a minute. And a woman in the front row said to me, so what was your award for that? And I said, it was a cowboy boot with a little spur on it. And I'll tell you why. Because I came into this program when I was 29 years old. You can see that was not yesterday. And so, you know, I was still young. I was in love sometimes, some moments. And my body was still working really great. And so, you know, there would be those moments of whatever it was going to be. And it's hard to make love to somebody you're really mad at most of the time, or that doesn't smell that great because he's been out 3 days or whatever. And so what I would do, because I didn't mean to do it, but my body was just present in the moment. And so we would have this moment of intimacy, and Sister Mary Gregory would rise up out of the bed, and Miss Kitty Dance Hall Girl was down doing the deed and really enjoying it. Well, Sister Mary Gregory hovered over the top and only would return to herself when it was over. And so that's why the cowboy boot with the spur on it. And you know, it's funny, I play golf. And last year, my husband presented me with a little gift for our wedding anniversary, and it was a little ball marker with a boot on it with a spur. Which people question on the golf course. And I just say, oh, well, you know, it's just one of those little things. So anyway, one day, my sister, who was closest to me in age, had gone back. She had 2 kids. She'd gone back to school. She'd become a nurse, and she was having a party. And it was a big deal, a very big deal. And that was one of the nights when my sweet baby didn't come home. And, most nights when he didn't come home, I had this little problem. It was called compulsive bar calling. I know you never had it. You just said, oh, well, But I had this, I even had a list. I would flip open the phone book, and there was a list of bars, possible bars. And so I would start at the top of the list, and I would be calling, and I would say, they'd say hello, and I'd say, is Leo there? No, he's not here. So I'd go to the next one. Is Leo there? And then I'd hear, Leo, are you here? And I'd hear, no. And so he'd get on the phone and he'd say, no, he's not here. And I'd say, thank you very much. And I'd call the next one. You know that step that talks about insanity? I didn't see that for a long time. One night, I remember, he didn't come home all night. I had a child in a crib in the bedroom, and I was pregnant with my second son, and he had a car, and the other car that was around was this little Austin Healey Sprite, which I hardly knew how to drive. In fact, my son who put up with my learning to drive that calls it the bumpity car because I couldn't get it in gear. I'd strap him in and we'd go around the block and he was, having whiplash. But that was the car that was out there. And this day I thought I better set out to find him. Leaving a sleeping child, this seemed perfectly logical to me. Stuffing a pregnant body behind the wheel of a car I hardly knew how to drive that sounded like a tank was starting at 4 o'clock in the morning and going out to look for him. Doesn't that seem like what you would do? The insanity of it all. And then I found him and came home. That was effective. So, I tried everything. I tried I'd send him off to work and I'd give him $2 a day, figuring he can't get drunk on $2 a day. Of course he could get drunk on $2 a day. I don't know how he did it. I had no clue how he did it, but he did it. I tried all of the things. The only thing I didn't do was pour out liquor because I was too damn cheap to buy more. So, I tried all of the things. I made all of the excuses you did. And then here's this party and he doesn't come home. And do I go to the party on my own? Oh, no, we have to sit and wait and, make a scene or whatever. And so that morning when he came home, he said something about it. And I said, I think you've got a drinking problem. Where that came from, I don't know. And he said, maybe I do. And I said, well, why don't you call AA? I have no idea. I don't know anybody in AA. I don't know where I got that because my denial, anytime I heard anything about alcoholism or AA or whatever, if I saw a television program or a quiz in a magazine, I slammed that sucker shut. That was denial. And he said, yeah, why don't you go call him? So I popped out of bed and I went in the other room and I gave AA a call. And I said, I have a friend who has a husband who has a drinking problem. And they said, honey, when he calls, then we can help. They didn't tell me about Al-Anon. That wasn't their job. So I said, okay, went back to bed and never mentioned AA again. Now, what I didn't know is years later, my husband said that bugged the hell out of him because all he heard from the bedroom was, he didn't know what had occurred. Little did he know nothing occurred, but it bothered him, which was a good thing. And so some years later, this came up again. I had gone back to work because for some reason I thought I better save myself. I'm not sure how conscious that was, but I knew I needed something in my life. So he would come home. I think he was working a night shift then, and he would come home and supposedly take care of the children while I went off to work part-time. And one morning I came home while he was taking care of the children, and one of the children had smeared some sort of cream all over the floor, and my husband was laying in the middle of the floor, dead to the world, while all this action was going on around. And I thought, that was not a good thing, and mentioned again that I thought he might have a drinking problem. And this time, I didn't call AA. I said, maybe you should call AA. And he said, I think I should. And I handed him a newspaper that had the number of AA in it, and I left the room. He called AA, and they sent him a packet of literature, and he tried to not drink on his own. And a little while passed, and I said, don't they have meetings or something like that? And he said, well, this is what the guy on the phone told me. He told me that this going to meetings was a very serious step, and I should think very carefully about it before I did that. This college-educated woman said, oh, okay. So strangely enough, the guy who had been the best man at our wedding, named Tom, was, whenever my husband drank, the group he drank with, whoever it was bad. But when Tom came around, it was really bad. They never knew where they were going to end up, if they were going to come home, if they were going to be driving the same car they left with. And so he said he'd heard that Tom had gotten sober in AA. We hadn't seen them in 5 years at this point. And which was just fine with me. And he came home one day after he'd been trying, I don't know if he even had 30 days in yet of his own, but trying to get sober all on his own, going through the tremors and whatever at work. I never saw any of that. I didn't know what he was experiencing, didn't have a clue all about that. And he came home and said, I'm going to call Tom and just maybe we can go down and see them. I was not for that, but we got in the car and we drove down to Coudersport, Pennsylvania, on the Pennsylvania border of New York. And there was Tom painting the side of his house, and he looked different. He had a different way about him. And my husband tells me now he looked at him and he said he saw something in his eyes that he wanted from that moment. So Tom took Leo off to Bradford, Pennsylvania, where he had his first AA meeting. And I stayed home with his little wife, Teresa, little short Sicilian girl, and we chatted. And we're doing the dishes, and Teresa says to me, Mary, there's a program for you, too. And I said, really, Teresa? What is it? And she said, well, it's called Al-Anon Family Groups, because you have character defects, too. Apparently, Teresa had not heard about my goodness. And I turned to her and said, really, Teresa, what might they be? And then we came home from their house and probably walked 400 feet down the street to the church at the end of the street, where there was an AA meeting upstairs and an Al-Anon meeting in a tiny little room downstairs, which was filled with smoke, and you could hardly see anyone around the table, but we were squished in there, and that was my first Al-Anon meeting. And strangely enough, I wasn't sure how I felt about going to Al-Anon because, I thought they were all going to be really my vision of alcoholism. Even though I believed my husband had a drinking problem, I wasn't going to call it alcoholism. It was a drinking problem. Because my vision of alcoholism, which I knew nothing about at all, was the dregs of the earth. And I'm thinking, I'm going to take this beautiful person who has these pigtails to this meeting and, sit with these people. And I got there, and oh my God, there was the woman across the street was in there. And this woman my older brother had gone to high school with was there, and I mean everyone was laughing, and I thought, what is this? She took me to my newcomers meeting, and she told me about the 3 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, you can't control it. It's an illness. I had no idea that alcoholism was an illness. I thought I was a good one, he was the bad one. It's just the way it went. It was, when I heard that, I heard it. And I know some people struggle with the concept of illness for many years. They just don't believe it's an illness. I believed it that first night because, there was this guy I loved somehow underneath all that. And I don't think he chose. In high school, when you had to pick a career, I don't think he stood up and said, I'll be an alcoholic. He didn't pick that. I didn't know that. All I saw was what it looked like. It looked like it hurt me. It looked like it was about me not loving him enough. I thought I caused it. I really thought, first I thought his parents caused it. They must have, because, he came to me that way. But I figured because I was going to be the one to fix it and make it better, that I had failed at it. I thought I didn't love him enough or well enough. I thought I maybe didn't cook well enough. I thought maybe that sex that Miss Kitty was doing was falling short. I had no idea. And when she told me that, it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me. It was his chemistry. It was his spiritual state at the time. It was all kinds of things over which he didn't even have control. I felt like somebody had taken a weight from my shoulders and set it over here. Now, that doesn't mean that I now continue to stop telling him what to do, because I had all the answers, just like you have all the answers. If you'd only listen to me and line up behind me, I would mow the lawn, do the checkbook, all those things, and life would go on. But a funny thing happened. I learned the Al-Anon program. I never missed a meeting from that Wednesday night on. Never missed a meeting, year after year after year. And after a year in the program and a year of sobriety for my husband, I was still feeling miserable. And I thought, well, I can't blame it on alcohol anymore. He's not drinking. Something else must be wrong. And I finally hit my own bottom. It took me a year in the program. Now, the first night of the program, when I heard the 12 steps, I said, okay, I got it. What else you got? About a month later, when I really heard that first step, you're powerless over alcoholism, I went, oh, like I'm also powerless over the alcoholic. Duh. It took me so long to get things. It took me a long time to get the serenity prayer. It seems so simple, doesn't it? God, grant me the serenity. You know how I tried to work the serenity prayer? I tried to get wise. I tried to make good decisions. I tried to do all the things that tells you, but I forgot the first part. God, grant me the serenity to do those things. I thought I had to do all those things, and then I'd get serenity. Well, that was an awakening. It was simply asking. It was simply asking for the grace. That's what I call it now, to have those things. So when I started to do that, life changed. I was a screaming mother. I you know how it is when you're living in chaos and you're angry and you're hurting and everything's going nuts. Who do you take it out on? If you have a dog, you take it out on a dog. If you have a cat, you take it out on the cat. I had kids, and I was screaming at those kids all the time. I'm surprised that they don't have one arm longer than the other, because at bath time, end of the day, you're tired. They're crazy. They're fooling around. They're splashing all over. Things are nuts. I would be jerking their little arms, saying, "Get on, stop it, stop it." And so that's why I think they should be walking around like that. But Al-Anon gave me tools. You gave me the serenity prayer. And I'd sit on the side of the tub and I'd say that over and over and over like a litany until I felt some peace. I had long given up any higher power or spiritual life. I'd grown up in a church. I always was doing the right things. If the nuns said, do this, I was right there. I was the star pupil. But I'd given it all up. I'd left it behind. I was confused about it. I was mad as heck at God. I didn't even know it. I came to the program, and you were all talking about turning things over to a higher power. Huh? You had those stupid slogans, too, that just were like so trite. But you were laughing, and I wasn't laughing. So I'd say, how do you do that? What do you mean turn it over? To what? To who? And they'd say, honey, just get up in the morning, say, turn your day over to your higher power, ask for help. So every day I'd get up and I'd say, God, if you're up there, and by the way, I don't really think you are, here's my day, have a shot at it. And a most remarkable thing happened. My life started getting better. Because the God of my understanding, or the God of what I now call the God of my misunderstanding, because I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue what God is. And my concept of what a God or higher power is has changed from the time I came into this program till it's currently changing. And so now I can just talk about the God of my misunderstanding. And that's a good thing for me. Because if I understand God, my God is too small. I like the mystery. I like not knowing what it is, how the power works. What I know is that power is in these rooms, and it's in between us. And I know how we come in here broken and beaten up and confused and whatever, and somehow we sit at tables and we talk to each other and we heal. How the heck does that work? And that's my concept of God. That's as good as I can make it. I love to share it with other people. I love to experience music with it, whatever, but I don't understand it. I love the mystery. I want to stay in the mystery because that keeps me small and keeps my higher power really big. Because obviously I was not managing my own life very well. But this is how I like to think about my higher power right today. I like to picture myself in a boat. And I'm rowing the boat, and my higher power is in the back. My higher power is moving the tiller on the boat. And I'm rowing, and we're going all over the lake, and it's good. Everything's good. And then I say to my higher power, excuse me, could I do the tiller? And my higher power says, okie dokie. And we change places. So now I'm in the back. I'm setting the direction. And you know what? We're just spinning. We're just going in a circle. And you know why that is? Because God don't row. So I figure if I just roll my little fanny off and let God be at the tiller, life is good. Life is good. I don't know. It takes a long time to get to that place where you make peace. I was in trying to find a higher power and know how a higher power would work in my life was a struggle for me. It took me 3-4 years in the program before I could even get it. I didn't even know how mad I was, except I'd sit at a meeting and somebody would say God or give God a certain name, and I could feel my stomach clenching, which is always my clue that there's something to look at there. And so one day I remember the kids were little and they had asked me to paint their bedroom navy blue, and I did. And then they wanted it something else. It was beige. They picked beige or something. So I thought, well, I'll just go up there and, slap some beige on the navy blue. And so every day I went up and put beige on the navy blue because you just don't cover navy blue with one coat of beige paint. So I would just go, it seems sane to me to go up every morning and before I'd have breakfast, I'd go paint the room. So I'm in the third day of trying to cover this blue, and I'm talking to God. I find myself talking to God. And I heard myself swear at God. And I heard myself saying, "Where were you?" And I looked around. Actually, I really swore when I said that. I'm not going to do that now because, And so I turned around to see who said that because I didn't even know that was coming out of me. I had no idea. I even felt that. And this peace came over me. I had no idea I'd felt abandoned by God, the God I grew up with. I had no idea that anger was in there. And somebody explained that to me once as like a couple that's going out on their 30th wedding anniversary or whatever. And, I don't know. I feel sad for you young people now because when we were dating, there were bench seats and you could actually sit like almost on top of each other while you were driving the car. It was all very cozy. And then bucket seats and seat belts came in and, you just couldn't do that. But when I was dating, we were right there. And on this couple is having their anniversary and she's sitting on one door and, he's at the wheel and she says, how come we don't sit close together anymore? And he looks at her and he says, "Who moved?" And that was me with my higher power. Who moved? I didn't know it, but I'd moved far away. So now I know I have to stay close. Now I know what decisions I have to make on a daily basis. Now I know I have to use the steps to show me. And, I like to tell this story about the steps and trying to find my higher power. And I think of myself, here's another, I'm so old. I can't believe I'm talking about all this bench seats. Geez. Now I'm going to talk about ironing. When I was a kid, my father used to wear white shirts, and my mother used to wash the white shirts, and then you had to sprinkle them, roll them in these little sausages, put these little sausages in a peach basket, which had a vinyl liner that had cherries or something on it, and then you covered them up, and they had to cook or something. I don't tell jokes. I don't know what they did in there. But after they'd been in there a while, then you could take the shirts out, and they'd be ready to iron. And when they came out, they were so incredibly wrinkled up from that rolling and all of that. I think you could never iron them. They'd never look good. And that's how I saw myself. I looked, when I came to this program, like one of those white shirts, wrinkled up, a mess, didn't know who she was, didn't know. And I came to you. But before that, I was trying to get the wrinkles out by doing this. Pushing it down, getting them out myself, my own steam, my own power. It didn't work very well. So I came to you and you said to me, take step 3. And I said, "What's that?" And you said, "Buy an iron." Oh, buy an iron, step 3. Okay. Get an iron? Oh, that's much better. Look at those wrinkles are starting to get out. But, they still had some wrinkles in there. And I said, "Well, now what?" And you said, "Take step 11. I said, "What's that?" You said, "Plug it in." So now I plug it in, and I plug it into that source of power and energy and light and whatever that is, and I plug it in every day, and then I iron that shirt, and unbelievable. It looks so much better. But I have to remember to do it every day. I came to Al-Anon, and I fell in love with this program from the beginning. I fell in love. I loved the principles. I loved the procedure. I loved everything about it. And it was a standard of principles I could really relate to and hold close in my life. I got it. I loved it. And so I became involved in service from the beginning. I was in a very service-oriented group. You had to wait in line to get to be a GR. God, I wish that were happening now. It finally got to be my turn to be a GR. I was so excited and so thrilled. And so I went to the information service and I chaired it and I did all these things. And, you let me. You let me. You didn't question whether I was doing it perfectly. You just let me do it. It was wonderful. You believed in me. And so I started to believe in myself again. I'd stopped going anywhere. I'd stopped driving. One of the very earliest things I did in this program was I couldn't even drive into the city to get my driver's license renewed because I'd become so full of fear and so full of anxiety about all of those things. Your life gets very small when you're living in active alcoholism. And I have to tell you, I brought a lot of that fear with me. When I was in college, I studied French, and I wanted to go to France in my junior year abroad, but I was afraid. I also didn't know that. I was also worried we didn't have enough money, but I didn't even pursue that. So suddenly I'm in service, and now you got to go places and you got to do things. And so I went with my friends to service, and we danced our fannies off at assembly meetings, and I felt like I was part of something bigger than me, and it was wonderful. And I was able to serve as a delegate, which is where I met Judy. And service was a huge part of who I became. And I started to travel, and I started to overcome my fears. And one day I found myself with Al-Anon family groups in Africa. And actually before that, Judy had appointed me to chair the International Al-Anon General Services meeting, which was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where people from around the world came to talk about Al-Anon. And here I am in Africa. This is a girl who can't drive to get her driver's license. But Al-Anon showed me how to take baby steps and little steps and reach out and have life again. Because I'd given up my life. The girl at the sink, crying and being melancholy, had lost her life. And Al-Anon was what gave me back my life. It taught me the detachment I needed so that I could go on. In the early days when my kids were little and my husband was sleeping as much in sobriety as much as he ever drank, I didn't understand that was part of his recovery. I didn't understand also that his sleeping and staying in bed was because he had no skills for living. He'd been drinking since he was a young kid. And so he was hiding there in some respects. I didn't know any of that. All I knew is that now when he was drinking, now he was sleeping. And so I would say to myself, this is how I practiced loving detachment when I was first learning it. What would I do today if he were dead? It's the only way I could do it. And I would say to myself, okay, if he were just not here, instead of waiting at the foot of the bed for him to wake up, you would pack a picnic lunch and you take the kids to the zoo. And that was the way I finally started to cut those little threads that tied me to him, that made me unable to have a life of my own. So I had a life of my own. I grew in service. I was able to have so many experiences, and so here I am in Africa. And we were invited to go to Africa with Alcoholics Anonymous because they were going to support that program. And they said what happens when they go there is that very frequently the families are the ones who are coming to look for help. It's not the alcoholics lining up saying, could we have some meetings? And so that's not their purpose, to help families of alcoholics. So they said, you may want to go on this trip with us. So we were in Africa, and we went to Ghana, Togo, and Cameroon. And we were in Cameroon, and we were in a little mountain village. They picked us up at the airport, and they threw our luggage into a suitcase. Or they threw our suitcases into a van and took us off up to this mountain village. And we arrived at the village, and all the villagers were there. The kids were there. The families were there. Everybody was there. We were meeting in a pole barn outside with the big logs for seats. And they were dancing. They were wearing African clothing. In fact, a lot of the women were going out to pick bananas later, and so they had their colorful work clothes on, and they were singing and dancing and clapping, and there was this joyful, joyful thing. It was just overwhelming. And we got out, and they started to have an AA meeting. And during the course of the meeting, they asked some of us if we would share. Now, I had some French. Cameroon's a French-speaking country. And they said, Mary, could you share a little with the people here about Al-Anon? And I stood up, and in, a very crummy little halting French, I tried to talk about the bewilderment and the frustration and the confusion and the anger and the fighting that I'd felt, that I'd been part of my life, and the wonderful peace that I'd found in Al-Anon. as I'm looking out into this group of people, you know what I saw? I saw what I see here. I saw heads shaking just like this because they knew what I was talking about. So here's this little girl from Bowmansville, New York, and she's in Africa sharing the message of peace and love of Al-Anon. This program takes us to places we never thought we'd be. It gives us opportunities we never thought we'd have. It opens us to life that we don't ever have to give up. It puts us at tables with people just like us. We're able to share and to help heal one another and to experience the beauty of this program. What an incredible gift. What an incredible gift. I just want to leave with this one little quote. It's from St. Francis, and I found it in a book when I was traveling one time reading. Remember that when you leave this earth, you can take nothing you have received, but only what you have given. A full heart, enriched by honest service, love, sacrifice, and courage. And that's what you've given me. Thank you so much. I love you very much.